Part 1. The Mysterious Case of the Black Dahlia. At 10 a.m. on January 15, 1947, Betty Binger, a housewife walking along Norton Avenue in Los Angeles, made a chilling discovery on a vacant lot by the road. At first, Betty thought it was just a white mannequin because of how it looked, but as she got closer, she realized the horrifying truth. It was the naked body of a dead woman. Betty immediately called the local authorities to report the crime. Hello. Today, I'll tell you about one of the most famous cases in American history, the Black Dahlia case, which occurred in 1947 and remains unsolved to this day. The body found was identified as Elizabeth Short, later dubbed the Black Dahlia, partly due to her jet black hair and the dark clothing she often wore. Elizabeth's body had been severed in two at the waist, and various parts of her body had been mutilated in a gruesome manner. Strangely, there was no blood at the scene, indicating that the body had been thoroughly cleaned before being left on Norton Avenue. Near the scene, the police found a blood-stained sack and footprints mingled with tire tracks. Through fingerprint identification, the Los Angeles police quickly determined that the body belonged to Elizabeth Short. The autopsy, conducted on January 16, 1947, revealed that she had been bound and brutally tortured, with the cause of death being asphyxiation and brain hemorrhage. The investigation began immediately with the hope of uncovering more information about Elizabeth's life and her tragic death. Elizabeth Short had moved to Los Angeles in July 1946. While working as a waitress, she pursued her dream of becoming an actress in Hollywood. She found love with Matt Gordon, an Air Force officer, and they promised to marry when he returned from the war. However, tragedy struck when Matt was killed in action, leaving Elizabeth in deep sorrow. After losing her love, Elizabeth found herself in a series of fleeting and uncertain relationships. The last person to see her alive was Robert Manley, one of her lovers. On January 9, 1947, Robert drove Elizabeth to the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles. After saying goodbye at 6:30 p.m., it was the last time Robert saw her. What happened between her entering the Biltmore Hotel and her body being discovered remains a mystery. Call to action. Don't forget to follow, share, and like LDT Group. The channel is struggling, and just one small coffee through PP at LDT Group will help keep us going. Every little contribution makes a big difference. If you need further adjustments or have more requests, feel free to let me know. Part 2. Strange Clues and Unusual Confessions. We only know one thing for certain. Between the last time Elizabeth Short was seen alive and the discovery of her body, she had a fateful encounter with the murderer who took her life. On January 24, 1947, a strange letter was sent to the Los Angeles authorities. The letter was pieced together from newspaper cutouts and was accompanied by several of Elizabeth Short's personal belongings, including her birth certificate, business cards, photographs, and an address book. All of these items had been carefully sanitized with gasoline, just as her body had been meticulously cleaned before being left on Norton Avenue. The police believed this letter could have come from the killer himself. They tracked down and contacted 75 men whose names were in Elizabeth's address book, but most of them were mere acquaintances. After examining the body, authorities speculated that the killer might have medical knowledge, as the cuts on her body were made with precision. As a result, the police interrogated individuals from the USC Medical School, which was near the crime scene, but the investigation yielded no useful leads. Although the investigation gradually lost momentum, public interest in the case never waned. Elizabeth Short's unsolved murder became a source of inspiration for many novels and films, the most famous being The Black Dahlia, a book published in 2008 based on her real-life story. Many theories about the killer have been proposed, and dozens of people came forward to confess to the crime. However, most of these confessions were later proven false. Experts believe there are 3 reasons why some people voluntarily confess to crimes they didn't commit. First, they seek attention. Second, they feel pressured by intense interrogations and confess to end them. And lastly, some individuals with mental health issues under stress may convince themselves that they are the culprit. The Black Dahlia case attracted significant media attention, leading many to falsely confess. Yet these individuals often couldn't even identify Elizabeth from photos, and their confessions lacked any real substance. One notable suspect in the case was Leslie Dillon, a 27-year-old hotel worker and former mortician's assistant. In October 1948, Leslie wrote to psychologist Dr. Paul DeRiver from the Los Angeles Police Department, expressing his desire to write a book about Elizabeth Short's case and revealing some violent and disturbing thoughts. Leslie suggested that his friend, Jeff Connors, might be the killer. However, after exchanging letters, Dr. DeRiver began to suspect that Leslie himself was the real culprit, as he shared many details about the case that only the murderer would know. The investigation took a twist when Dr. DeRiver and an undercover officer, posing as a driver, accompanied Leslie on a search for Jeff Connors. However, DeRiver believed that Jeff might not even exist, and that Leslie Dillon was the true killer. Leslie's intimate knowledge of the area where Elizabeth's body was found only added to the suspicion that he was responsible. Call to action: don't forget to follow, share, and like LDT Group. The channel is struggling, and just one small coffee through LDT Group will help keep us going. Every little contribution makes a big difference. The investigation took a twist when Dr. DeRiver and an undercover officer, posing as a driver, accompanied Leslie on a search for Jeff Connors. However, DeRiver believed that Jeff might not even exist and that Leslie Dillon was the true killer. Leslie's intimate knowledge of the area where Elizabeth's body was found only added to the suspicion that he was responsible. Don't forget to follow, share, and like LDT Group. The channel is struggling, and just one small coffee through LDT Group will help keep us going. Every little contribution makes a big difference. Part 3. The Final Mystery of the Black Dahlia. Case: Leslie Dillon was arrested and brought to the Los Angeles police station for interrogation by Dr. Paul DeRiver. The police also tracked down Jeff Connors, the friend Leslie had suspected, and discovered his real name was R. Lane. At the time of the murder, Jeff was working at Columbia Studio, a place Elizabeth Short frequently visited. However, there wasn't enough concrete evidence to charge Leslie, and he was eventually released. The fact that Leslie Dillon wasn't charged, along with several discrepancies in the investigation documents, led many theorists to believe that the police had intentionally covered up the case. The investigation became a symbol of incompetence and possible corruption within the police force during that era. Another suspect in the case was George Hodel, born on October 10, 1907. He grew up in Los Angeles and had a remarkably high IQ of 186. However, George's life was filled with scandals, including affairs, incest, and multiple marriages. He had as many as 4 wives. George was even suspected of being involved in Elizabeth Short's murder and possibly other homicides over a long period. In 2001, George's son, Steve Hodel, a detective with the Los Angeles Police Department, began investigating his father after discovering some suspicious clues. While going through his father's old belongings, Steve found an album containing 2 photographs of a woman with dark, curly hair who closely resembled Elizabeth Short. This fueled Steve's suspicion that his father might be the true killer. Steve also uncovered that George Hodel had been one of the prime suspects in the Black Dahlia murder back in 1947. The precise method of cutting the body matched the medical knowledge George had gained during his time at medical school in the 1930s. Moreover, anonymous letters sent to the police and newspapers by the killer had handwriting similar to George's. In 2003, at the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office archives, a recording from 1950 was found. The recording had been made when George Hodel's home was bugged by the police. In the recording, George could be heard saying, "Suppose I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now, could they?" These words further solidified Steve's belief that his father was the actual murderer. Steve Hodel also suspected that George might be connected to several other murders, including the disappearance of actress Jean Spangler in 1949 and a series of killings in Chicago. Steve even found a strange link between Elizabeth Short's case and the Zodiac Killer, another infamous serial murderer. Steve feared that his theory would be too outrageous for people to believe, that his father might have been both the Black Dahlia Killer and the Zodiac Killer. In 2012, Steve returned to his family's old home with a cadaver dog. The dog detected traces of human remains in several areas around the house. After taking soil samples for analysis, the results confirmed the presence of human remains. While Steve's theory gained support from many experts, there has yet to be an official conclusion to the case. After more than 70 years, the true killer has never faced justice. However, for Steve Hodel, he believes he has found the murderer. It's now up to the public to decide if they believe him. Don't forget to follow, share, and like LDT Group. The channel is struggling, and just one small coffee through PP at LDT Group will help keep us going. Every little contribution makes a big difference.